I want winners. I want people that want to win.
All right, Rod. Double G here with Rod. Coach Singletary would not have been happy with today's game if he wanted winners, because the 49ers, in fact, did not win. They went into Atlanta and kind of laid an egg, but I also feel like Atlanta played really, really well, to the point of, I think Marcus Mariota only had one incomplete pass the entire game, which seems ridiculous considering he's Marcus Mariota. But yeah, the 49ers just got their butt kicked. I'm not even sure. Like there's some, I'm sure there's some emotional fans saying like, oh, they did it to us again. They got our hopes up, and maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. But ultimately, with the injuries, with how well Atlanta played, Atlanta's offensive game plan was tremendous. I don't know. I guess so here's my first point, which is something that you and I talked about. I don't believe you believe in trap games, but this had all the feelings of the Niners kind of trying to get healthy for next week's game against the Chiefs at home on grass, and not really giving this game away. You don't give away games in the NFL, but kind of going like, yeah, we're going to go at it with maybe not our full boat here, and we're going to try to get healthy for, the future.
Well, that definitely seemed to be the case. That, obviously, if it was a playoff game, there probably would have been a lot of players who did not play today that probably would have gone. So, as far as that goes, yeah, they just bullied us. That, to me, that's like the worst way to lose, is when a team is like just running the ball down your throat and there's nothing you can do to stop them. And that's what that was. I mean, they just lined up and beat us. That's what it was. And yeah, that's pretty demoralizing.
The ability for them, because if you look at the stats, like this, their stats are not gaudy in any way. They only averaged 4.2 yards a carry, and most of that was because Mariota was 6 for 50, so he led the team in yards per carry. But Huntley and Algier 3.7, 3.4 respectively. But what it did is it gave them third and short, because there was a couple moments in the game where I was like, okay, if we want Marcus to be Marcus, let's create some, third and longs, because then he's going to have to survey the field and make some decisions and throw the ball. But for most of the game, they were just constantly in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. And then we'll talk about this in a second, but I call it the old okey doke. He's able to trick the defense a little bit. He's looking for ends to crash. And if they crash, then he keeps the ball himself. And so there were things that they did where they took, the 49ers defense, obviously missing a Nick Bosa. There were some moments where I don't think Mariota could have done some of the things that he did if you have a Nick Bosa on the field, because Nick Bosa is just as valuable in the run game as he is crashing the passer there. So I feel like their ability to just kind of be patient was really key, because that's how the 49ers win games, right? Is the 49ers stay patient. If, Jeff Wilson gets 4 yards per carry, then 3 yards per carry, then they're like at a 3rd and 3, which is manageable. And that's what Atlanta did. I never felt like they thought they had to make crazy big plays to win the game. Their mentality seemed to be take what they give us and be happy with it, and then play defense. And man, it was just patient football. And it just reminded me, I imagine when teams play the 49ers, they sort of feel how we feel today after losing in Atlanta.
Yep, that's for sure. And that was the thing that stuck out to me early in the week when I started looking at this game, was how committed they were to the run. And with that was the thing that stuck out to me going into this game, is with the challenges we were having in the middle of our defensive line. And then when you add the fact that Nick wasn't going to be there, and you had pointed that out even last week about how soft we were at times versus the run up the middle. And they really, really exploited that, and not with huge gashing plays, just 2 and 3 yards, 4 yards at a time. But they, as Stink kept mentioning in the broadcast, Arthur Smith's willingness to just stick with that and take those small gains, and not, whereas some offensive coaches, if they're getting 2 and 3 yards a carry, they feel the need to abandon the run and start throwing it. But that was not the case with Atlanta. They just continued to pound it. Continued to pound it.
And the Niners, they kept their streak of somehow being unable to stop some of these guys, these quarterbacks, from picking up big yardage. There was a 3rd and long where I was watching the game with my wife, and I said, I forget who came in from the side, they had just sacked Mariota. And I told her, I go, well, he's going to get there again. And they have to be smart enough to know that the second he crashes again, Mariota's not going to take the sack. He's going to try and run. And that's exactly what he did. He picked up like 20 yards. And I was like, if I can see that, like, how were they not ready for it? But ultimately, it was just the great ability for him to do that. And the Niners, you would have think that after all the times that they've had to face Russ, that they'd be a little bit better at it just from a repetition standpoint. But this is constantly the way that you can beat them is with a mobile QB picking up 3rd down. And like, it's not like there were very few penalties. There were a couple of penalties on the offensive side that were a little, I guess you could say they were a little bit at the wrong time. There was the nice play to Ayuk late when they were trying to make a comeback, and then that gets stopped. But yeah, I cannot sit here and do the whole woe is me thing, because there weren't many things that I saw from a mistakes perspective that caused them to lose. It was just like, oh, and I imagine some of the teams that are watching this game, they're like, huh, that's interesting. Like, we can also do that against this team. Now, injuries come back, guys come back. I don't imagine any team is going to be 100%. So I think that's also a fallacy to believe, well, when we get all of our guys back. No, you're never going to get all of your guys back. The reason why the 49ers defense is so good is because they have depth. These guys are going to play. And so, yeah, I'm not really even that bothered, because I'm just like, oh, they exploited something that I sort of feel like was good to get exploited, because then it's something that the 49ers can figure out and build upon and go, okay, here's how teams may start attacking us now.
Well, I'm not privy to the medical reports, but one would feel that at some point, some combination of Armstead's injury is dependent on how they fix it. Seems like an injury that at some point he'll play. Whether they're going to break the fascia and just let it heal, or just let it heal, whatever, at some point he'll be back. I don't know about Kinlaw. And that's been a mixed bag even when he plays.
Yeah.
So I believe I've been talking about this in the forums for a couple of weeks now, that somebody like Ndamukong Suh would be a great option for what we need.
Why is he not on a team right now?
Well, he was a free agent, and Tampa didn't want to give him the money he wanted. And now he's kind of in, Von Miller, OBJ mode, where he's just kind of trying to see how things shake. Apparently, just trying to kind of see how things shake out and sign with somebody who got a shot to win another championship. So, I don't know, make losses like this. I still think, even with this is a bad loss. We've had several bad losses. I still think this team is a good,
Yeah.
In the weak NFC, we're still right there, I think. So I would think we'd be in the running for somebody like that. Or he might end up in Philly, or I don't know, back in Tampa. Tampa, I don't know. They seem like they're teetering. But yeah, so that's what the word is on him, is that he's just looking to, be a late. He didn't want to do training camp, like most vets didn't want to do that. And now we're coming up on damn near halfway through the season. So yeah, that would be an interesting acquisition for us. But we do need to address the middle of our defensive line, I believe.
You could sort of you could sense it with the linebackers, right? Like the linebackers, it sort of seemed, just watching, they knew they needed to help in the run game. And so they, not to say that they were cheating, because they're very fast linebackers, but a couple of guys would be out of position just slightly and opened up a possibility for Mariota to make a play. And that's the thing that I think is maybe what I hope is that they're not going to have to do that too often, to where, if you get Bosa back, you get Armstead back, then that probably fixes itself. But that's what I noticed, was like, they were like, oh, we're going to have to make plays. And maybe they were a little bit over aggressive on some of them and a little bit out of position. But yeah, the whole NFL was sort of up and down today. The worst team in the league, from what a lot of people think, the Steelers, they beat the Bucks. Mitch Trubisky, of all people's, making two third down throws, and then he runs a sweep of his own, and that ends the game for Tampa. Brady had no opportunity to get the ball back, which is, I think, what everyone expected, is like, okay, they're gonna have to punt. Brady's gonna go 85 yards to score or whatever. Nope, he didn't even get the chance. And then the Jets, the Jets beat the Packers. Like, that was kind of crazy. And so, yeah, the whole NFL is sort of like upside down. The Giants beat the Ravens. They go 5-1, and we'll see the Eagles and Dallas a little bit later today, how that shakes out. But to your point, there are not many great teams in the NFC. Philly looks kind of like the leader of that crew. Dallas's defense is going to keep them in ball games. We saw what the Rams look like. Not great. The Bucks, the Packers, they're all struggling as well. So this loss coming at this time in the season is probably not terrible, because we're still going to be atop the NFC or the NFC West, no matter what, after today. So again, another reason why I'm not too super bothered with this, even though it is frustrating. It's frustrating to lose to a team that you're supposed to beat. They were at home. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. It's more frustrating than anything else. And they're stacking up. We've got, in my opinion, we've got 3 bad losses now. We should have beat the Bears. We should have beat the Broncos. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I know, but come on now. We were better than all of those teams.
Oh yeah.
We should have won those games. And what you just hope is that you don't get to the end of the season and it come down to, you're a game out of the playoffs because of, and then you look back. You look back and say, well, if we had just handled our business one of those 3 weeks or something like that. Making
it tight. If you don't win the division, then you're going to have to do what they did last year, which is get hot. I think in this case, as long as they win the division, I'm not as worried about the placement of where they are in the playoffs. But because the division is so weak, it gives you a little bit of a cushion where hopefully a game like this doesn't hurt. But then again, we could go and we could the Rams could come into Santa Clara and beat the Niners, and all of a sudden, we're kind of in the same thing. So, yeah, you don't want to have too many of these because of, it's a 9-8 NFL, and where everybody has a chance, except for the truly, truly bad teams. But we got a question, and I think this is a little bit of frustration from Gallo 209. He says, Jeff Wilson Jr. and Coleman are garbage. Are they ever going to play Mason? And so we had this conversation about Wilson last week, which is
what a difference a week makes.
Right, exactly. Wilson isn't dynamic, but he is a really good backup. You don't lose as much maybe as other teams by going to Wilson just because he's a steady hand and he knows this offense, and now he's got that burst back. I was really disappointed in Coleman. I thought Shanahan was going to utilize him out of the backfield a lot. I cut in my fantasy, like in my 49ers fantasy, Shanahan and Coleman, this is kind of like a let's get our old team back kind of game. And so I thought Shanahan was going to script some stuff for Coleman to kind of, maybe take a pass, or like last week where he goes one-on-one down the field. He was barely involved. Even after the Wilson fumble, Coleman was barely involved. We didn't see Mason, as far as I could tell, at all. And Davis Price either. I don't think I don't remember seeing him on the field. The Niners had 4 active running backs in this game. They also had Debo, who they didn't use in the backfield, but maybe 1 or 2 times. And it was mostly Wilson and a little bit of Coleman, and that was it. And I was surprised because I thought when I saw how active all those guys were, I was like, oh, we're gonna get a couple guys coming in rested, and boom, they're gonna hit a hole, and then Wilson will get some carries, and then they'll share it around. But they didn't. It was really Wilson and Coleman. But then in the second half, they're mostly in shotgun with Jimmy gunning it anyways. But I still think the fumble was the fumble's really, I think, the key play of the game, because it just flipped. Like if the Niners had scored, then you're like, oh, 7-7, like this is going to be a tough game, but we're going to go back and forth. But you get down 14-0 like they did, and with the way that they were going to run the ball, that was tough, and I thought that was the play of the game. But at the same time, that, like, Jeff Wilson Jr. is not going to usually be the reason why you lose a football game. And I don't know if Jordan Mason is the reason why you're going to win a football game. So we'll keep an eye on that. But really, it's all about Mitchell coming back anyways.
Right. Absolutely. What needs to happen. And, it's kind of like I've likened it to with Mooney Ward, is that when you get your number one, you kind of move it improves your team, not only at that position, but it moves everybody back one. So Wilson is now your 2, Coleman's now your 3. Once you get Mitchell back and he's RB1, everybody else kind of moves a step back, which strengthens the team. It's a problem, because Jeff Wilson is good, even as good as he was last week. I don't think any of us believes he's a RB1 in a perfect world.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. All right, so my second point is after my second point, the third point is really generic, and it'll just kind of let us talk about everything. But I wanted to focus the second point a little bit. How do you slice up the pie here when it comes to what we saw? Was it the Falcons game plan, the lack of depth on the Niners defensive line with everybody hurt, or were the 49ers just not ready to deal with the Mariota stuff? And if they weren't ready to deal with it, it's kind of frustrating because they knew it was coming. And I kind of wonder, do you think D'Amico Ryans was like, well, our defense is just too talented and we don't have to worry about some of this gimmicky stuff. Like, how do you slice sort of the blame on defense?
Well, it just seems to me, I felt that we just didn't have the horses today. We talk about our depth, but we were, especially again in the interior defensive line, we were really testing that. I mean, we were at. I don't have the snap counts in front of me, but we were asking a lot of guys who we weren't really counting on playing huge snaps today. No Kinlaw, no Armstead, no, he's not obviously Nick's not an interior defensive lineman, but no Nick. It's just you're counting on, Kerry Hyder and Aminu and even Ebicom went out. So we were counting on our depth pieces to be frontline players, which is always kind of a recipe for disaster. You want those guys to be able to mix in. You don't want to be counting on them for huge snaps. But then, you also have to give the Falcons credit for seizing on that and exploiting that weakness. That was, they did what they were supposed to do, and we still had our frontline linebackers. And although there was just so much. This game is such an attrition game, and we were losing guys. There was a stretch there where I think that was you that posted about we got who was on the field and who was standing on the sideline holding their helmet. I mean, it was really stark. How fast your depth can be exhausted.
I think Hufanga, he went into the blue tent pretty much on the first drive, so that would have been one. And there was a couple of other guys who, like, right on that first drive, the injuries already happened. It was one of those things where you're like, again, right? Like, you're like, we're dealing with this again. We don't get a reprieve on these injuries. And I think I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but turf injuries versus grass injuries. The Niners' injury luck has been really poor in these last few years, and I don't think either of us are knowledgeable enough to know why. But when you start the game and you're like, we've been talking about Hufanga early in every podcast because he just stands out. I know he made 6 tackles, but it wasn't really a Hufanga game, right? It was opening drive. Hufanga, Tavares Moore, Ibukam, and Drake Jackson all went to the sidelines with the helmet in their hand. That was just on the first drive. So whatever it is, the Niners are a little bit unlucky with this stuff. But
the thing is, though, if you and that's a thing in the forums, with fans trying to assign blame for all the injuries. And like you say, I don't know, and we don't know. But what I do know is that from watching other games with other teams, that attrition, it's the thing. It's not like something that is isolated with just the Niners. It just seems like this season in particular, injuries are really up. And then especially after the whole Tua thing, it seems like there really is an emphasis on, if you go to the sideline and are in the concussion protocol, your chances of coming back are pretty slim at this point, because they don't want another, PR situation more so than anything else. I heard somebody, one of the national talk shows were talking about how even more so than the injury itself to Tua, just the whole circus around
Mm-hmm.
him getting the first, what we thought was concussion, and then him playing 5 days later and then getting another one. And that becoming not only a sports topic, but apparently that was like on Good Morning America. And that's what the league doesn't want. They don't want
Right.
those type of issues to become national issues and,
Sure.
around, player safety and those type of things.
Think about how these guys still talk about concussions, though. And I'm not calling out Jimmy for being insensitive in any way. I think this is just the football mentality. But he was on Tim Kawakami's podcast, and he said, yeah, when Trey went down, we just thought it was a concussion, like ho-hum. And then we saw it was the ankle thing. And now I had to think about, oh my gosh, now I'm starting quarterback for the whole season. Like, just it's still to these guys like, concussion, you can deal with that. We're tough guys. We'll get back. That is still the mentality with the players. And then you hear Shanahan's, like, Shanahan opens the press conference with updates on the injuries, and he was like, yeah, Hufanga, we were worried about concussion, he was fine. This other player, yeah, we thought concussion, he's fine. And so it's just like, concussion is still, when it comes to the coaches, when it comes to the players and how they talk about it, it is not that they don't talk about it in the sense of like long-term injuries. They talk about it as like, yeah, ankle sprain, he'll be back next week kind of thing. So that's interesting to see how players still see this stuff.
And that is exactly why the new concussion protocol was supposed to be different for just that reason. And that was the whole thing for me surrounding the whole Tua thing. Number one, after the first one, there was talk where he was talking about, well, it happened, and then I said, quoting him, number one, as a player, you're not supposed to be in. You should not be. You should be completely removed from the decision process as to whether or not you're coming back. And the players just shouldn't have a voice in that, because we know, just as you said, where they're going to come down on this. They're going to want to get back out there. And we know
Young, right? Steve Young told us he lied constantly about his concussion so that he could get back out on the field. That was part of his, his deal.
And then the team obviously they can't be trusted. So we were supposed to have this independent third party who obviously we can see isn't as independent as we thought they were.
Right.
So this whole thing, like you say, it's not, the players don't take it as seriously as it really is. The teams don't take it as seriously as it really is. And I don't know what the answer is. But I hate the conversation around it, because people want to say, well, these guys are like, there's some kind of informed consent. This is what they signed up for. And so we shouldn't care. If they don't care, we shouldn't care. And that is just so cavalier for something that's so serious.
I know.
It's,
and Shelvin mentioned, Mike McDaniel caught heat for saying it was just concussion. Mike McDaniel, when he was in that press conference, he was like a deer in headlights. He did not know what to say. He looked like he was shaking a little bit. I kind of felt bad for him.
Yeah.
Because of that moment and the heat that he was under. It was like, well, this is part of being a head coach.
This is why you make the big bucks.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, that, like you say, that whole thing was what, again, like I said, that's what the league doesn't want, is that kind of look is what takes that from a football story to a news story. And the league they don't want any part of that. It messes up the money for everybody if people start looking too deeply into health and safety and, the things that surround the game like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this is a little bit more of a general broad topic that'll kind of let us go in a few different ways. what is there to learn about this specific game, about this team? And so I think we all know this. We don't have to learn this. We knew this, but the Niners are not a team built to be down by 2 touchdowns. That is just not the way that they play ball. I will say, when Jimmy had to get in shotgun, I liked a lot of the plays that he and the wide receivers made. There was many drops that I think could have really helped us get back into the game. There was the McLeod one that was like right on his fingertips. That was a really good throw. Still, I just wish he would just hit this dude in stride and his, the whole thing. But that was a good throw. The Werner throw over the middle was a really good throw. So there were opportunities there. I think he missed. He and Kittle kind of got mixed up in the corner of the end zone. Kittle kind of cut the route short, and Jimmy threw it like he was going to the corner. So there's stuff there that they can continue to work on, but they just don't normally. This is not normally how they play football. I think you look at the 2 interceptions by Garoppolo. One of them was at the end of the half. I don't really consider that anything more than a punt, but when they're coming back, we talk about these Jimmy throws. That was a Jimmy throw, and I know he would take that one back. There was probably pass interference on that, which they picked up the flag on for some reason. That has still not been explained to me. But that was the one where you're like, I thought for what they did, not again, the offensive line also blocked fairly well in this game. I didn't see Jimmy really have to run for his life at all. He made one bad throw that kind of is the thing that we're going to think about. But I also thought he made some good throws. He made some deep shots. If he would just connect with one of these deep shots, the one to Ayuk gets taken away. There are things that you can take away from this game from a Jimmy perspective, but when they lose 28-14, ultimately you're just like, they weren't, they're just, padding stats kind of things. But I think there's some positives that he could take away from this game when it comes to opening things up when they need to.
Yeah, but still, this is not a bash Jimmy thing at all. It's just 40 attempts does not play to his strengths. That's not where we want to be.
They want to be 18 of 27 for 200 yards, and that's how.
And conversely, but this goes to your initial overall point in that we're not built to be down 14 points. We need to get way more than 16 rush attempts. We just that product mix doesn't work for us. 40 pass attempts and 16 rushes is just not. That's just not 49er football.
Nope. 50 yards on the ground is not going to cut it for them. 3.1
We're not going to win many of those games. It's just that that's just not how we're built. And like you say, even under those circumstances, our line, the offensive line stood up pretty well. All things considering, we threw it 40 times, but again, their strength is not pass blocking. So as you move forward, if we put ourselves in those type of situations, it sets up for Jimmy throws. It sets up for the pass blocking not holding up. Those are identified weaknesses of our team. And the more times you put yourself, more bad things are going to happen than good things are going to happen if we are in those circumstances. So
four QB hits for the Falcons and no sacks. So he didn't even go down one time. I know he had to step up and run a couple of different times, but you would think
we did have that one that it would have been a sack fumble actually, but we got called back for the penalty.
Yes.
I
don't know what the hell he was doing on that one. I think he thought Kittle was there to shovel the ball to again or something. Like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
So from the perspective of obviously the run game wasn't there. We've talked about the defense. The secondary wasn't even really tested. Like a lot of the Mariota stuff was, was quick stuff, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not like he was in a 5-step drop and letting the ball go. So you can't really take much away. I guess you could say though, do we know if Sammy Womack is related to Bobby? He's like I don't know if Womack is a common last name or not, but
Mm-hmm.
they attacked him on one of those
Yeah.
touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
and he that was a moment for him. I'm sure that he's going to be watching on tape and everything, because there was a was it a run to his side,
Mm-hmm.
and then he got flattened by one of the O linemen, and then the touchdown.
You posted about it. There, he had it was a sequence there where
Yeah.
he had a couple of plays in a row where they just weren't that he didn't have his best. He was exploited
Yes.
on like a couple of plays back to back, a run play and then a pass play. It wasn't a great sequence for him, a great drive for him.
Yeah, and then Mooney Ward being hurt with the groin. What's up with all these groin injuries? And I guess the groin injury is probably somewhat turf related. You don't really hear about the groin stuff a lot, other than when these guys are on turf. But I guess the only other thing, and if you want to take away a positive, and this may be giving away my player of the game here, Ayuk caught 2 touchdown passes.
Yeah. He was good.
When I looked at his stats, I just assumed he had many more yards than he did, but I think he caught 8 balls. He caught 2 touchdown passes. There was one that he dropped. That was, I think it was a 3rd down throw that he probably should have caught. But ultimately, he was the guy that Jimmy was going to, and so he was getting open. Jimmy was very comfortable with him. He had more targets than I'm looking at the targets right now. He had 11 targets. Kittle and Debo had 10 each. And so, sometimes he can be a little lost in the offense, but especially early in this season, Jimmy is looking for him, and Jimmy is comfortable throwing to him. He's really good on those slants or those posts over the middle. And I don't know if it's his best game as a 4-down era. We could probably go back through some games and see like maybe more explosive plays. But man, from a consistency standpoint, I thought he was really, really good today, as was Kittle. Kittle wasn't really a targeted guy. He was much more of a safety valve kind of guy today, but he looked fast. He was tough. He's running dudes over. So all of those things were on the positive end, but that's the only other thing that I'm sort of looking at as like, what did they do well? Well, I thought the receivers played pretty well, and I don't know that I don't feel like Debo is really, really in sync with the offense yet, though. He doesn't get open on some of the plays that Ayuk does, and a lot of his catches are still coming on screens and on short things that they expect him to take, to the house. And he is like one guy though. He's running, and he's like, if he just gets by this one guy, I think he's gone. And then he's getting tackled by the shoestrings. But I still think we're going to see some really, really big Debo games that we haven't seen yet. And if Ayuk stays consistent, if Kittle is back, I think those bode well for the future. But ultimately, if Jimmy's got to throw this many times and he's got to target those guys this many times, it's probably going to be in games like this or in shootouts. And I'm not as confident in those kind of games.
Not at all. But that, when you talk about what we learned or things that are positive I don't know that I want this many pass attempts, but I do like the fact that, Jimmy did kind of spread it around, 11, 10, 10, and then even Juice got into the act with 4 targets. So, if you maybe want that to be 25 instead of 40, but if the distribution is, equal going forward, that's a good thing. It doesn't allow teams to it punishes teams if they want to double either Kittle or Debo, or if anybody's getting doubled, it the willingness to distribute it to other people just strengthens the unit. So that's a good thing. Yeah, that is definitely a positive, I think.
All right, so for player of the game, I gave mine away already. I think I'm going Ayuk, just for the fact that, the guy, first time in his career he's gotten the end zone twice. I think that is major kudos there for him. Still a very young player. And, defensively, I don't know. Amanahu had a nice sack. I know Drake got a sack as well, but ultimately the defense wasn't playing to their strengths. The one other player who kind of stands out, and if he catches that ball on the deep play, he could have been the player of the game, and that's Ray. But outside of Ray and Ayuk, I don't really see too many other guys. But maybe you have another guy.
Not at all. Warner's always going to have a lot of tackles, but it really was. There's more that had more to do with the fact that Atlanta was running so many plays.
Yeah,
more so than anything else. So yeah, I guess honorable mention would be Ray. He had the big punt return. That was good to see. But yeah, it's definitely Ayuk.
Yeah, I was looking at the time of possession. So I know the Niners held the ball late and made this a little bit better, but 33 and a half to 26 and a half. When it came to total plays, it was about even. But again, that is because the Niners had the ball late at the end, and then that evened it out a little bit. But yeah, other than that, like it was. There were the two, there was the fumble, which was the big play, and then there was the Jimmy throw that was the turnover that you want back. But otherwise, like penalties, 5 for 30, 5 for 40, kind of a clean game. And it was, not things that I can really point to and go, that's the reason why we just got beat.
Well, it's really, I think you're right. The fumble definitely was the play of the game, I think.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the other story of the game was simply the attrition in game. I mean, I think it was more so than the volume of injury. I just think that the way it set the tone early. Like you say, during the first drive, it was like a mass unit all of a sudden. Yeah. And that just kind of, I felt like it set the tone. We lost McGlinchey for a bit there, and my man, whoever that, Hance, he immediately was giving it up. So yeah, it's just you can only be so deep. I mean, it's in a salary cap sport the way it is. When you start, when you get anybody, if you get to your, so Moore is in, and you get to your third and fourth tackles, those guys just aren't good. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. I mean, you don't want those guys playing. And we were in a situation with our defensive line where our 10th, 11th, and 12th guys, which are good depth pieces, but you don't want them playing 20, 30 snaps a game. That's just not conducive long term to success. So for me, the fumble and attrition were the takeaways from this game. And I just will look back on it, and it's a rough loss.
Yeah.
Loss.
So we look ahead to next Sunday. Now, as of this recording, the Bills are beating the Chiefs 9-7, I believe, at the half. So we don't know what's happening. It looks like it's a low scoring, close game, which probably leans a little bit towards the Chiefs right now to have that style of football game. But this is a game that I think the Chiefs, because of that Super Bowl, a lot of people would love to see the Niners play really, really well and beat these guys. It sounds like Bosa and Trent Williams should be good to go next week. Shanahan said something to that effect and in his press conference. I personally, not only because I don't want to see the Niners go 3-4, because then that changes things, but this is kind of like a litmus test to me, because I kind of want to see, are they as really good and talented as I think that they are? Because the Chiefs are that, and maybe they're not as good as they were last year or the year before because they lost some offensive firepower, but they're still a team that you kind of hold yourself up to and go, okay, if we can play with these guys, we can play with anybody. So that's more or less what I'm looking forward to next week. Again, I don't want to see them lose because going 3-4 is not a good look, but this is a measuring stick game to me, because I look at the Chiefs, and there are other teams, like we said, the Bills and Philadelphia, and those are the teams that you're kind of comparing yourself to. But we owe them a nice one there, and it's at home, and it should be a big game. Mahomes is Mahomes.
What time is it next week?
It's a 1:25 game.
Okay, so it's a late game.
It's a late game,
late afternoon.
And I'm very excited for this game. I don't want to see the game get away from them, because then I'm going to feel like, oh, my read on this team was maybe a little off and they're not as good as I thought. So that is sort of my thoughts heading into next week.
Definitely. And, for, the strength of our team is the defense, and it's going to be even without the loss of Hill is huge for them, but still Mahomes is great, and it's going to be a great test for our defense. To see where we, if healthy, when healthy, and Nick is there and whatnot, we were talking about them as being the best defense in the league. Well, if they are the best defense in the league, next week would be one of those litmus test moments to show that you are, in fact, that.
What do you think is going to be the point spread for this game? Because I feel like if the Niners took care of business today, no matter what the Chiefs do against Buffalo, I feel like the Niners would have been favored by your normal 3 or whatever. But losing this game, I feel like it could be closer to a pick, or maybe they may even have the Chiefs favored, which
that's exactly what I was going to say. Is it could be anywhere, I think, from pick to Chiefs 2.5.
Yeah.
That's where I think it would be. And like you said, I 100% agree that we would have had at least the 2.5, 3 for the home field advantage, if nothing else, if we had won this week. I think that, if nothing else, just the public sentiment will have us at either a pick or an underdog at home.
All right. Well, that's going to be a big one. And I think our Facebook page, we have the links to the Facebook page. If you are not a part of our Facebook page in the show notes for this show, I think they're, I think some fans are going to be a little frustrated, but after today, but looking ahead to Kansas City, it's a big game. It's week 7. We kind of start to learn things about the teams and if they're really good or not by week 7, week 8.
Yeah.
And
you kind of are who you are at this point.
Right. And so, yeah, well, we're going to have a lot of fun in the group and in the chat next week, because I think sometimes these 10 o'clock games, especially for the folks who don't live in the Bay Area and they're trying to figure out how to watch the games, we don't get a lot of attention in the chat sometimes. But I think next week, because I would imagine it's one of the national games as well.
Yeah.
So there will be more eyeballs on this, and we'll have some fun stuff during the week with the Facebook group and then the chat, and then you and I coming back. It's the biggest game of the season, so it's gonna be a blast. And so in this feed, also tomorrow, I will be back with my buddy Brad, kind of following the Major League Baseball wild card playoffs and the fact that the Dodgers lost. Yes. And then on Tuesday night, the Warriors
ring night
open up against the Lakers, and me and my son will be back after that game to kind of do a quick, 30-minute post-game thing. And, there's the Jordan Poole extension. There's the Andrew Wiggins extension. There's the Draymond non-extension. There's so many things going on with the Warriors right now. It's ridiculous. But so we're going to have a bunch of stuff all week. And then Rod and I will be back next Sunday after 49ers Chiefs. So
I had the opportunity to come to Vegas for a birthday party, and I brought all my stuff because I didn't want to miss getting on with you and talking 49er football. So just to show you guys that this is really important to me, and I just love the opportunity to share some time with you guys.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. But can you, before we get out of here, explain the shirt? Where did you get the shirt?
It's a Foco shirt. It's, my little 49er aloha swag.
There we go. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. So thanks for checking in with us. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring you better news, but I did not want to make this an emotional podcast. I think there are very strong things to talk about based on this game that were frustrating, but not to the point of like, oh, these guys are I saw some of the Twitter stuff. So
yeah,
but that always happens. That always happens after you lose. So.
Kind of reactionary. Everybody's trash. Everybody should be fired.
Exactly. There was stuff to take away from this game, and again, Atlanta just played extremely well. If they we'll end on this thing, but we kind of saw it last week with how they played Tampa, and they kind of got screwed in the end there. Where, I think
frisky. They are a frisky team.
That's the best word for it. So okay, so we'll be back next week, and like I said, look for shows in this feed and on YouTube. All of our stuff, except for the Red and Gold Standard, is also live streamed on YouTube, and the page and everything again in the show notes. So for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.